It's interesting. I mean, I know Speedy has a question for you, but it's very interesting because I do believe he's better than Mahomes. I think his skills are just as good or even better. The only thing now is he's had a lot of problems with the press now, and I don't think any team or any coach is going to trust that he's going to stay out of trouble after this.
So I want to go back to what Errol was saying about the parity. One of the big reasons for the parity this year has been the fact that I don't know if it was the end of 2 weeks ago or the end of last week, I saw there's actually more road wins in the NFL this year than home wins. And last year we saw the Buccaneers win the Super Bowl as a wild card. They were a number 5 seed. They had to win all 3 playoff games on the road. Now with all these road wins this year, there's no obvious home field advantage. Can you see that kind of thing continuing in the playoffs with an even larger sample size than maybe just one team running through the playoffs?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That's certainly part of it. And that's something our guys have looked at in terms of just home field advantage basically disappearing the last 2 years. Obviously, last year we had no fans, period. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the numbers have been like this year, but certainly the apparent lack of home field advantage has played a big part of it so far. I will say college, we finally saw one in college where that played out. University of Michigan, they had a pretty wild atmosphere on Saturday. So I don't know if maybe that bodes differently for the NFL in terms of the playoffs. Maybe more people are willing to go, or if maybe it's COVID is just keeping people away, or maybe it's just purely the NFL experience is keeping the people away. I don't know if I really have an answer for that.
So we're talking about, I just lost my whole train of thought on my question. Oh, all right. So this offseason, Carson Wentz was kind of given up on by Philadelphia because they thought Jalen Hurts was the man. Indianapolis said, we'll take him because Frank Reich is a miracle worker for him. And Carson Wentz has really had a bounce-back season. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is also going to be in the same boat this offseason when he gets dumped. Probably, I don't even know where he would go, but he's going to be traded or shopped or released or something. He will be wearing a new jersey next year. Do you see the same type of response from Jimmy Garoppolo with a different team? Or do you think that he's going to be an afterthought when he gets released, cut, moved?
That's a tough one. Part of that is going to be how the NFL views the rookie class. And I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more up in the air than last year. Obviously, we had 5 guys last year that the NFL loved. We knew we were going to be first-round picks. Obviously, Jimmy has been starting most of the year over one of them. But the fact remained that we kind of had a good idea that those 5 guys were the guys that teams were going to get invested in. I don't think there's going to be anywhere near that many guys this year. And we're talking, Detroit, obviously 0-10-1 looks locked into that first spot and in desperate need of a quarterback, but no one at this point really thinks they're going to take one. So that kind of speaks to that. Does that bode well for Jimmy? Maybe, but it might mean he's on a bad team too. I think there's going to be a place for him and a chance for him to start. So that's a place to at least start with.
Blue next year.
I don't know what that accomplishes, though. I think he's still
He's a winner.
I don't know about that. I think he's still just a guy. I don't think he does anything really special. He's not super accurate at any level. He doesn't have a huge arm. He's not a super athlete. He gets injured quite a bit.
He likes to hang out with porno stars, too. So.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
Well, and also I think it's worth pointing out, Carson Wentz has been okay in points. But, he's had a lot of turnover luck. He's still making a lot of really poor decisions, a lot of really poor throws. He's not grading super, super well. He's just in the 70s. He's just a little bit above average for us, which is going to put him at best in the middle of the pack in terms of the starters. I don't think he's been anything that special. He's not a complete dumpster fire like he was for Philly last year, so it looks like he's better. But I I don't think Carson Wentz is all of a sudden this example of put him somewhere else and he's going to shine.
As you guys know, we are talking to Pro Football Focus senior data collection analyst Josh Liskiewitz. Last question for me, Josh. What were your thoughts with the win by Michigan knocking off Ohio State, which, by the way, I am going to come in and say this from the beginning of the season, and I am not a Michigan fan. I've been saying that this is the year that Michigan's going to knock off Ohio State. I was right. They didn't just knock them off. They kicked their rear ends. And a lot of people making excuses. Well, they're not built. Ohio State's not built for that condition, that weather. Oh, wow. And did you see that face, that smile that Jim Harbaugh had when the press talked to him? I've never seen him smile so widely in my life, even when he went to the Super Bowl with San Francisco.
Yeah, I think I should probably start by with a disclaimer that I'm actually a Michigan alum. But that being said, my view of Michigan the last 2 years has been very dystopic. So I haven't had a lot of positive things to say about Harbaugh and his regime. I at least thought it was somewhat hopeful that he had brought in basically the entire new coaching staff. Mm-hmm. And really, I think that's what's precipitated all of this. It's just they've grown up and started to play modern football. They go for it on fourth downs. Obviously, they ran the ball like crazy on Saturday, but that's just because it was so efficient because Ohio State was so bad up front. Mm-hmm. They've been better in terms of passing, intermediate, and deep. That's been a big deal for them. And defensively, they're not just playing man; they're mixing coverages. They're more physical up front. And I mean, when you've got who really should be the first ever defensive end to win the Heisman Trophy, not to mention on the opposite side of him, a guy who's probably going to go in the first round too on the other edge. I mean, that tends to help.
So in terms of their ceiling this year, because if they win the Big Ten, they're going to make the college football playoff no matter what. Yep. And also there's what do you think is different this year the most with this Michigan team as a whole? Maybe you mentioned the concept perspective, but also from a player perspective, losing it last year, new quarterbacks, new running backs all around. And is this the turnover of the Big Ten now? Because we always see it's Ohio State dynasty, and now they've started to show some flaws. Is this the new turnover for the Big Ten, or is it maybe more of a parity? What do you think long term?
I don't know about that. I can't speak to exactly why. I mean, obviously we can look at the game and come up with individual things as to why Michigan beat Ohio State. But Ohio State was flawed. I mean, a lot of the issues they had early in the season against Oregon, those popped up this week too. So, I mean, I think the big part of it is this just isn't really a very good year for the Big Ten. I mean, Penn State's obviously had a ton of injury problems. They've had their issues. You look at the other side, Wisconsin is just not Wisconsin. Iowa's been up and down throughout the year. They've kind of somehow survived to get this far. Michigan State got lucky through the transfer portal. But when it came down to it, they got absolutely smashed by Ohio State. So it's just kind of a weird year with that. And I think Michigan's had stability. Yes, I guess, and head coaching is part of it. But ultimately, I think it comes down to quarterback play. I think there's just so much more consistency there, even though they've kind of had this weird split playing time with their quarterbacks. But just the ability to, when the game is on the line, to be able to say to the quarterback, hey, you've got to make some throws, and to have him do it like he did against Nebraska. Like he did against Ohio State. I think ultimately that's been the biggest change for them. Certainly Michigan has a lot of talent, and they're going to get recruiting boosts from this. So maybe that puts them on more even par on them going forward if we're thinking long term, them versus Ohio State. But I'm not willing to just yet just think that the keys are handed over and it's now Michigan State's conference or Michigan's conference. I'm not willing to say that just yet.
You brought up the Heisman. In recent years, especially, you can go through the list of Heisman winners. There hasn't been much success in the recent history of the Heisman winners in the NFL. Is there a correlation, you think, or it's just that the players that have a great year and then they just win the Heisman, go in the draft, and nothing really happens? Or do you think there's a reason why these players can't succeed in the next level?
I think part of it is the Heisman is all about the stats, and it's all about a winning team. So you've got a lot of pieces around you that are working well. And things that work in college don't necessarily work in the NFL. So you look at last year with Devontae in Alabama, just absolutely insane year. But he's not big. He's not really that overly fast. And when guys in the NFL get up in his face, something he never saw at Alabama, never had to because of the depth they had at wide receiver. He never had guys playing press. He struggles. And that's why you saw, like, this past week in particular against the Giants, you knew Bradbury was going to whoop him. I mean, that's just what he does. So you look at things like that. Same with quarterbacks. Some of the things that put up big gaudy stats in college with the spread offenses and just being able to get rid of the ball super quick and having all day behind a dominant offensive line like we've seen from Ohio State multiple times with some of their Heisman Trophy winners, that's hidden a lot of flaws in the true passing ability of quarterbacks. So I think when you put those things together, that's probably why you see a lack of that. Now, if Hutchinson wins it this year, I don't see him failing, barring catastrophic injury. He does everything you could possibly want. Obviously, we're talking about a defensive player versus an offensive skill player, so it's very, very different. But man, that kid just has it all. He's apparently just a supreme athlete, just outstanding off the field, leader off the field, in the weight room. Is always the guy that's pushing that team, and you can't argue with the results on the field. I mean, that kid does everything, and he's as productive on the field as J.J. Watt was in his prime. That's my comp to him, not because he's the white guy, not because he looks like he has those long arms, but because he's so dominant on a down-to-down basis. He just wins.
He's a big man, too.
Flipping down.
He's a big man, too.
He's so versatile, like Watt as well.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be definitely a guy that Jets might be snagging up.
Or the Giants.
Yeah. I mean, sitting there with 4 and 5, I mean, the Jets have really positioned very well to get 2 really massively good players. But anyways, Josh, thank you for joining us. Tell the fans how they can find you on social media.
All right. PFF_Josh is my Twitter handle. And They don't let me write anymore for PFF, which is good because that takes a lot of time. It's funny. It's one of those things where you're on Saturday you're grading your alma mater live, winning the biggest game they've won in 20 plus years, and then on Thursday night when you're done with the podcast, you're going back and reviewing someone's grading of run plays in UMass versus. Who do they play? New Mexico State. So
nice.
So it sounds like a lot of fun, but it's not as sexy as it may appear to be. But
maybe
we have.
Maybe Tyler could send you his hat that he's wearing right now to make you look even more sexier.
There we go.
It's a Ranger hat.
Then it won't make you sexy. It might make you ugly.
Are you a hockey guy, Josh?
Born and raised in Michigan, have to be a hockey guy.
Detroit Red Wingers.
Whoa.
Yeah.
We're not.
No, I just got a question for him. That's all. Hello?
He's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
So you're a Red Wing fan?
Of course.
How sad will you be when Dylan Larkin speeds out of Detroit?
Why would he speed out of Detroit?
I don't think he
wants to. You think he wants to be there for the next 10 years?
He's got the great and powerful man running that team in Stevie I. I'm telling you.
In Stevie, I trust.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not in there long, if he's not there long term, it's because
pretty well.
Yeah, if he's not there long term, it's because Eisenman decides he doesn't need him there. But I would be surprised at this point if that happens.
Best player they've had in such a long time since Nicholas Lindstrom, since the Eisenman time, Fedorov. This is a good player.
Yeah.
This is a good player.
Was just there like
this
5
is a
years
good
ago.
player, and they're not just going to say, sayonara, we're going elsewhere.
You
That's
act
not
like
him. It's not him.
He might say no.
He's staying with the Red Wings.